And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Bubba and the Bloom, episode 197. Coming at you live on a Thursday evening, talking 2025 fantasy baseball targets and fades inside the top 200 ADP at each position. Talk about that and much, much more here for you. Before we get to that, you can find me on Twitter at BDintric, the podcast at Bubba Bloom Pod, and my co-host, as always, on Twitter at RyanBHQ. Ryan Bloomfield, how are we doing, my friend?
Good. Back in the routine after a couple I don't want to say off episodes, but non-live episodes, which were great. And we thank Ray, Corbin, Chris, Tom, and Brandon for those last two shows. We got a lot of good feedback on those. So those were fun, but it's good to be back Tuesday nights, Thursday nights with you. I know you had your vacation a couple weeks ago. We had our forecaster shows, and I'm going on vacation in a couple weeks. So cherish these live evenings with you, my friend.
Yes, they're fewer and far between in the off season because it's the off season. That's the way this works, folks. We got to keep it fresh for the regular season and do that stuff. But we'll have all your episodes coming to you as always. As we're moving farther into the 2025 dives, position previews will be starting end of next week, I believe. No, 2 weeks. 2 weeks from now. So those are coming right after the new year. We'll start position previews and just get ramping through all of that. So that'll be fun as well. So if you have any questions, as you know, come hit us up in the Patreon Discord over at patreon.com/Bubba Bloom. You can check that out as well. A lot of fun stuff going on in those parts. And Ryan's got all his tools. He's got some new stuff he's working on. It's going to be awesome. And we got news and notes and all kinds of other fun stuff. So come check up on all of that. Michael C's in the chat. What up, boys? You were missed. We missed you too. And we talk to you every day, Mike. But yeah, thanks for joining us back on the live stream, my friend.
On a proper medium, we were missed.
Yes, that is for sure. All right, Ryan. We usually update news and stuff. We did that a couple weeks ago. We might throw some more news coming down the pipeline here, but this is a fun one. We're talking our targets and fades. Within the top 200 ADPs, you can't go like way outside of the realm of things for fades and whatnot, which is fun. We're gonna go each position. This was an interesting thing because Ryan and I were we were planning stuff off air, and Ryan looked at what we did last year and pulled up last year's targets and fades, and let's just say entertainment, to say the least, on some of those. Couple hits, some big misses. So some fun stuff there.
Yeah, probably should have had it pulled up because in the face of accountability and transparency, yeah, there were some rough ones. I know one of my starting pitcher fade as of last year was Tariq Skubal, so that was not good at all. Not even going to try and go back and listen to my reason for doing that. I'm sure it was the price and injury, but lesson to be learned from that one. So hopefully we have a few more hits. You had a couple misses too, but we both had some hits.
I had Ellie de la Cruz, yes,
as a fade, which so did, I mean, he was 50-50. Ellie was extremely polarizing, and yeah, we were. I was with you on a fade of Ellie, and we were obviously wrong. So.
Yes, we were. So hopefully we're better this year, but at worst, you'll understand it's fun trying to predict a fantasy game that we all like to play, and we'll do our best in doing so. So, Ryan, let's have some fun. I'm using ADP from December 1st till today, December 19th. You can use whatever you want. I was just prefacing it for our listeners. Draft Champions ADP for those at home. It's basically giving us a window of
what's that? 5 drafts?
It says 5, but that's not accurate.
It's not accurate.
Well, we've been having issues with this the other day. I was doing a show with Ben, and mine had like 14, and Ben had like 6. I was doing something the other day, and there was a lot more than 5 drafts over the last while here. Maybe it is accurate. I don't know. But from like November 15th, there's 16, so maybe there's only 5 drafts. But
these are drafts. NFBC does it so where once the draft is done, that's when it does it. So these would have been drafts that started in October. So it might only be 5.
It could be. It could be. But yeah, I'm going with those 5. So we'll roll with that. But I'll let you kick it off, Ryan. What do you got at your catcher target here?
Why do we start with catchers?
Because we go in order from best position to the last position. That's just kind of how it goes.
Let's see. All right. Dom in the chat. Bloom with the fresh cut. Yeah, I didn't say that on my intro. Fresh haircut today. I haven't. It was this afternoon, and it's maybe a little TMI, but I'm very much looking forward to my shower tomorrow. The first shower after a fresh haircut is You wouldn't know, Bubba, with that bald head of yours over there. It is pristine. So I'm looking forward to that first post.
First FSWA award-winning comments, and now don't know about a fresh cut of hair. Yeah, okay, gotcha. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, trying to dig.
All right, so what do you got to catcher here?
I quick peek behind the curtain of this one. I guess somewhat your fault, and you were a little late getting. That's I take again, a little late getting your picks in. So I actually made first picks on every single one of these targets and fades. So I may have cherry picked some of the easier ones and some that I think you would have taken as well. But whatever, such is life. My catcher target right now is Willson Contreras on our catcher rankings that were up on the Patreon. I think we both had Willson Contreras as our number 5 catcher behind an admittedly like elite tier of William Contreras, Yainer Diaz, Adley, and Salvador Perez. I think, and this has been talked about a lot, but I think if the move for Willson Contreras from catcher to first base actually happens this year, just the plate appearance total, the risk of injury, not being behind the plate every single day, is going to get Willson Contreras close to that kind of like legendary 600 plate appearance mark that we love to have for catchers. Right now, there's only 4 catchers, I think, projected for 600 plus plate appearances, and Willson Contreras would be that 5th if he's able to do it. So it's really just Willson Contreras from a talent standpoint he's a good catcher. I don't think the ceiling is elite or anything like that. I think it's the combination of more playing time and reduced injury risk, playing a less demanding position if he's like first base and DH.
Yep. No, I like Willson Contreras a lot as well. Everyone seems to be on the same page as you said about getting first base eligibility is going to obviously boost him, or should obviously boost him in a big way, because health has been an issue. Hopefully he stays healthy, even though it's been like hit by pitches and stuff. So it's always a questionable situation there. But on paper, should be able to navigate things a little better at first base and at DH. So yeah, I'm with you on that one as well. All right, a guy for me, and I've talked about him with you and some others, is Tyler Stevenson. I'm starting to buy back in for a couple reasons. When you're talking about the rankings, I have him as my 8th catcher right now. He's currently the 11th catcher off the board, ADP of 145. Now, am I taking him as my first catcher in every draft? No. Like, I love him as a catcher too. If I can do that, that'd be more ideal. But he's a guy on targeting in a big way. Last year, we saw 19 home runs from Tyler Stevenson, the most he's hit in his career. Got back to 138 games, which was big. Hit 258. This is a guy that is only a few years removed from we loved the hit tool we saw in the batting average department. We saw in the quality of contact metrics were much more improved this last year at 9% barrel, 44% hard hit. There's just a lot of things that are in the right direction, I should say, for a hitter of Stevenson's caliber, not to mention the ballpark. They'll play him at first base and DH as well, so he might not get as many plate appearances as a Willson Contreras. Like, he's projected for 526. He has had at least 515 each of the last 2 seasons, which puts him still pretty high up on the board there. So he gets more playing time than most catchers. Let's put it that way. He's definitely the top third of catchers that's why he's drafted around the top third of catchers, which would make sense. I just think there's another level to him. And maybe it's the batting average that prevents him from being higher up on a lot of people's boards. But to me, he's got 20 plus home run upside, heck 19 last year. So it's not asking a lot to get to 20 plus. But there's a guy I think he could maybe find his way back into like a 275. If he plays a full year hitting in the middle of Cincinnati's lineup, that's a run producing machine. Like, that team's not going to be great all the time, but they'll score a ton of runs. So I think Stevenson, like he might not do it every year, but like the year Jonah Heim had a ton of RBIs, Stevenson could fall into that in a big way. So I like Stevenson, especially as a catcher too. If you wait and he's a catcher 1, it's not the end of the world in my opinion, because I think he'll finish closer to a top end catcher 1 than most think.
Only thing I'll add to that, I agree with everything you said. From an actual like draft ADP standpoint, in terms of the catcher position, Stevenson's in a group, a pocket, like we all like we like to say on this show quite a bit, a pocket of catchers going in that 9th or 10th round in 15-team drafting holds right now. That's Logan O'Hoppe, Langoliers, JT Realmuto, Francisco Alvarez, and Tyler Stevenson. Stevenson's kind of going towards the end of that group, and then there's not another catcher taken until 4 rounds later. So it is kind of that last, I think, acceptable catcher 1 in a 2-catcher league. Stevenson is before things start to really pan out. So in addition to what you just said about Stevenson himself, I think where he's going in the draft is within that position is pretty good. My I'll just transition to my fade because he's in that same pocket as Tyler Stevenson, and that is Francisco Alvarez, coming off a pretty missed a ton of time because he tore a UCL in his thumb, and he was out for pretty much the entire first half. Had like 116 plate appearances in the first half. Only, and this is a forecaster tidbit, only had one home run in his first 59 plate appearances before the injury. So I don't think we can totally pin everything on Francisco Alvarez's down season on the injury. The biggest thing for Alvarez, he doesn't hit for average. He's a power hitter, but last season, 53% ground ball rate. You cannot be a power hitter and hit the ball on the ground that often. So Alvarez has to adjust that. He still can. This is age 23 season. Don't want to be too hard on the guy. But if you're a power hitter, you need to hit the ball in the air a ton more. And if Francisco Alvarez is hitting ground balls, you're not getting the power, you're not getting the average, and what are you getting? And then, again, to top that off, I like Tyler Stevenson, I like Real Muto, I like Langoliers that are all going in that kind of same group as Alvarez is. And the projections have Francisco Alvarez that I'm looking at very similar to Gabriel Moreno and Keibert Ruiz, who are both going 4 rounds later in early draft and holds. So.
Yeah, this is when Ryan said he filled his out before me. Most of them I was good, like not mad he took. Francisco would have been mine as well. I'll just clarify. Like one other thing I've said about him is he's very tricky though, because there's people that will argue he's like the next best power hitter. Yeah, and he could be.
Mm-hmm.
He could be a Langoliers, he could be a Cal Raleigh. I think Francisco Alvarez has one of the bigger ceiling to floor gaps in all the catcher position. Like, and we've seen the floor recently. We have never seen the ceiling in the big league level. He's still super young. A healthy season could change that. There's a lot of ifs with Francisco Alvarez. So I get it if someone wants to take the risk and be like, hey, here it is. I wish he's just going later to take that risk is what it comes down to. Like you talked about the pockets. So that's like my extra part on Francisco is I'm not going to just come out and say the dude's not good or whatever, which you did not. I'm just saying like as a fade for that reason. It's more just the variance in his potential outcome compared to some other guys there. If he is like per se your catcher one, that's terrifying. That could crush your fantasy team. So he's a fade for me as well. But the fade I picked to make things a little more dicey on this show. Let's have some fun here.
Oh, here we go.
Let's have some fun here, folks. I'll get some blowback on this, like most other things I say on this show. The third catcher off the board with an ADP of 67 is one Adley Rutschman. That is my fate, folks. I will not be paying that ADP. I said the same thing last year. I could have put him on the show. Didn't, but I could have. I'm not paying the premium for Adley. I know everyone will point to the injury that he suffered and didn't, produce, but his numbers weren't he's just not been consistently that good. Like he's good in real life. His OBP dropped this last year, like in a big amount for his standards. Batting average, he's been 250 and 254 in 2 out of 3 years. So we can't say he's a batting average asset. Power-wise, he hit 20 home runs 2 years ago, 19 last year. If you want to have some fun with this, if you look at the Fangraphs player rater, Adley Rutschman was the 6th catcher last year with a dollar value in 5x5 15-team leagues of $15.80. The 8th catcher on that board was Tyler Stevenson at $15.20, and they're going about 80 picks apart. So that's kind of my reason with Adley is I think he's a very good player. I think he has a very good floor. He doesn't have a ceiling to be like a top 6 round, 7 round pick to me at catcher when there's so many other catchers I'd rather wait for. I'd rather have Willson Contreras. I'd rather have Tyler Stevenson. There's a slew of them. I'd rather have. I know we're going to talk Logan O'Hoppe on a Patreon debate show for Patreon members. I'd take Logan O'Hoppe over Rutschman, so I'm looking forward to hearing your just based on ADP. It's not just overall production. ADP, you got to factor all of it into play here in my book.
Jesus, so what are you drinking over there, man?
Celsius. Did have 2 hazies before the show
though. Now it makes sense.
But I'm still just not all in on Adley Rutschman. Like again, could be wrong. Prove me wrong. He just hasn't done it in 3 years. So everyone's pointing to the one injury, which is fine. But the year before was 20 home runs in 154 games. I'm just not paying that price. If I'm going to pay a price for catcher, just pay all the way up for William. Stop messing around. Is the way I see it. Like don't even joke around. Like Yainer Diaz and Adley are similar. I still take Yainer in that regard. But yeah, Adley is a fade for me. I won't keep dragging Adley through the muds. But I'm not paying that price.
I mean, the one thing I'll push back on is your comment about the ceiling not being that. I think the ceiling is like a 280, 30-plus home run.
30.
Yeah, I mean, not to extrapolate that first half. He had 15 in the first half last year at 294. And I'm not blaming the entire second half on injury, and I'll get to that in just a second. But I think the ceiling for Adley Rutschman is massive, actually. Like, I mean, then you put in the prospect pedigree, and we saw the flashes of it. You saw the team. I think the ceiling is he could be the number one catcher this year.
We'll see. But and again, I don't want to give up all our stuff from our upcoming, catchers and debate shows, but I will understand a guy played hurt comments a lot. Catchers get hurt every year. That's the one position I almost don't want to hear about because those guys can get hurt. Those guys can get hurt so easy on foul tips. It's almost every catcher will be playing hurt in the second half of the season. That's just the reality of the situation.
So one thing I'll also throw out to, and kind of a recent thing, and I have Adley second on my catcher rankings, and this may cause me to put him down. We'll see. I need to think about it. But did you see Dave Funnell tweeted this out on Twitter? Dave's a great follow injury guy for Fantrax. An article that Jake Rill, who's an MLB.com reporter for the Orioles. Did you see this?
No.
Apparently the second half, and this is what the team is saying, so who knows? The second half, they are not blaming it on the injury for Adley Rutschman. They are blaming it on fatigue. So I'm going to quote the article that Jake Rill wrote about Adley, and it's quote, when a player's production drops off so drastically in the second half, it's natural to wonder whether he may be playing through an injury. Externally, some have wondered if that would be the case with Rutschman this postseason. Earlier this offseason, Elias, the GM for Baltimore, acknowledged that Rutschman was naturally tired from playing one of the sport's most grueling positions, but there was nothing beyond that, per the GM. There is not an injury that I would speak to of any nature, Elias said. So take that for what you will, but I think a lot of folks out there are blaming the bad second half solely on that injury with Adley Rutschman, and maybe that wasn't totally the case. That was an interesting read and a good call out by Dave Funnell on that one.
Yeah, and that could definitely be the case. I'm not going to say it's not because that would make sense. My question is, why is year 3 of his career he's getting tired? And why? And Patrick Bailey had the same problem the previous offseason and didn't. I know they're different players. I'm not comparing the two, but he was almost worse this past year. So I agree.
And
I like that they're not.
And O'Hoppe, by the way.
I'm glad they're not blaming the injury though. But
that's the grain of salt though, because even if he was hurt, I don't know if they would say that publicly. Like I don't think Adley would want that to get out. So who knows? But again, I thought it was interesting.
Again, I think he's a good ball player, but at that ADP, not for me, dog.
All right.
How many shares do you have right now? How many shares do you have right now, by the way? Since you think he's the number one catcher next year?
Adley? Yeah. I don't have any yet.
Okay, I'm just curious.
I've only done 3 drafts. I'm not like you.
I'm just messing with you. All right, who's your first baseman?
What do you want me to say? Like 4? It's December.
I'm just having fun. I'm having fun with this.
All right. Jesus. No, this show's gonna be like 3 hours long after that one. Mm-hmm. All right. First base target.
Yep.
I'm gonna go. Yeah, I got 2 of them on here. I want to give you some wiggle room. I'm gonna go Josh Naylor. I think there's a pretty big drop off in terms of like ADP production at first base this year after the top 5 again, with your Vlad, Harper, Freeman kind of that first, second round, and then Olsen, Alonso going shortly after those guys. Josh Naylor is kind of the next start to that next tier, and I think he should be. I think the projections have him around 265, like 25 homers, upwards of 10 steals. I think if he gets traded from Cleveland, that's just fine too. Like I don't think that's a negative for Josh Naylor. Theoretically, he would get traded to a contender. So I just think Josh Naylor is stable as hell, gives you a pretty good batting average, and at first base where there's not many stolen bases to be had, even though he's a big man knows how to run. And so I just like the overall package with Josh Naylor. My honorable mention was Christian Walker, who's going right next to him. I won't spend too much time on Walker, but they're going right next to each other. That's a nice spot where I'd like to take first base in 6th or 7th round of 15 teamers.
Yeah, I like Walker quite a bit this year, so I'm with you on that. The only thing with Naylor that scares me is they're rumored to Seattle lately, and that terrifies me.
That would suck.
That's the only thing. But I agree with everything else. Yes, obviously Team Naylor on this show. There's no denying that. The big man. All right. For me, you mentioned the drop off after Naylor, so I'm in that group kind of after Walker, Naylor, and everything. And I'm talking about Vinny P. Vinny Pasquantino. It's a guy we've been waiting to break out. Had the shoulder issue again this past year, but in 130 games, we saw 19 homers, 97 RBIs, 262. Plate discipline's pretty darn solid, a less than 13% K rate. The biggest concern, and I know it'll get pointed out, he does hit the ball on the ground a lot. 39.5% ground ball rate. Still has a 43% fly ball, which is nice. It's a lot of line drives. What I love about Vinny P, especially at the first base position, if you don't get one of the elite guys at the top, like Guerrero, Freeman, those are the primary two I'm thinking of. Harper's not bad in that regard, but Vinny P, I think at the position is going to hit for a pretty decent average. Like he's projected for 270. He's got a 262. If he ever could play a full season, is a 23, 24, 25 home run guy, I think. I know the ballpark's not ideal for that. I get that argument. The other thing I like besides the average is I don't think the 97 RBIs is a fluke. I know 97 in 130 games is pretty crazy, but in a full season, he's a 100-plus RBI guy hitting in the middle of a very, very good order that just got Jonathan India to lead off to get on base even more. So you have India, you're going to have Witt, probably Salvi at hitting third, I'm guessing, unless they switch him and Vinny. There's going to be a ton of chances for run production for Vinny Pasquantino. And as you go down that first base board, like Ryan was talking about with Naylor and stuff, it starts, you pick your poisons, and you want as many 4 to 5 category guys as you can. You're going to start settling for a lot of threes eventually. To me, Vinny can still be a really good batting average guy, really, really good RBI guy with pretty decent power and runs scored. And I think that's pretty positive if you don't go aggressive at first base. You can go at an ADP of around 105, 106 and still have a pretty solid starting first baseman.
And I'm not really that worried about Vinny P staying healthy. Like he had 550 plate appearances before he broke his thumb last year. Like I don't really.
He came back early from that.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm not saying you were kind of citing that as a risk. I don't think injury for him is really that big of a deal. So I am on board with that. He is going right next to Vinny P is going right next to my fade, who is Triston Casas. I think when you compare those two guys, along with Josh Naylor and who the hell's the other guy? Christian Walker going slightly before Casas. Like to me, Casas is the one who sticks out, and just we have not seen the track record. We have not seen Casas, who I do think is a pretty big injury risk. This the nature of the injuries that we saw from him last year, that just like bizarre rib cage thing that just never got right. Like I don't know, especially when those other 3 first basemen are going around Triston Casas. I realize the ceiling's pretty high with Casas. I like the lineup. I like everything with that. It's more the track record, playing time, and just better options at going right around him.
Yep. Casas has been quite the conundrum. So I'm
people
with you.
Love him. People love
some
him.
People
I get
he's the next 40-plus home run guy, and can't argue. Like he's like the Francisco Alvarez of the position. The ceiling could be through the roof. But my question with Casas is, if he's so elite, and I get there's an argument, why are they're trying to trade him to anybody that'll take him? And I get you can get a great return for him, so I get the argument there. But if he's this elite guy that you can build around, why are you just so willing to just move on? Is my question.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they assume that they could move Devers to first, and then Casas is expendable.
I'm saying, why would you just trade this young bat that you have control of for so many more years before you have to pay him? That's where I'm kind of like, I get it. They're trying to get like a stud pitcher back and stuff, so I see the arguments there. But it just seems kind of like, wow, what are we doing there? So it's like the latest thing from I can't remember which beat writer it was on Thursday, saying that Craig Breslow is their guy. Said that they're shopping everybody, but like a lot of guys, he's talking to people. He's trying to be Jerry DiPoto, it feels like right now, making trades. So we'll see how that one
can't mimic the legend. There's Jerry's one of one.
In my upcoming PT Tomorrow article, I literally put dealing DiPoto in my in my write up for the Mariners. So don't you worry about that. If we'll see if that makes the cutting room floor or not. All right, my fade at the position. This is a yearly fade of mine, and I know some people love batting average help, and they'll take this pick. And I have never taken this pick, and don't know if I ever will. That's Luis Urias. ADP is 192, so I'm creeping towards that 200. But it's just simple for me. Yes, the batting average is great. He's hit over 300 in 5 of the last 6 seasons. That is awesome. That is a game changer. But he's only hit 10 home runs once. He has never had double-digit steals. He's only had over 50 RBIs once, and he's had 70 or more RBIs the last 3 or runs scored the last 3 seasons. He doesn't he's a 1.5 category guy essentially to me, maybe 2 if you want to give him runs. So I cannot even come close to taking that guy on my team. I know some smart people do, and they build around it. Kudos to you. He's basically a rabbit, but with batting average, and I'm not building around that.
Batting average rabbit. I will probably try this. I will probably try a Luis Arias build, because you can put pieces around Luis Arias.
Oh yeah,
like you could start with
smart
Ellie.
People do.
You could grab a Matt Olson, a Pete Alonso. You could grab other low batting average guys, Kyle Schwarber, Cal Raleigh at catcher, to surround Luis Arias. Like, I'd be interested to see what that looks like, because from a strict projection evaluation standpoint, Luis Arias is like the 114th-ish hitter off the board. Projections have him as a top 50 hitter, just because that batting average is so elite. Now, I'm with you. I have trouble taking Arias for all the reasons that you said, but I might just try doing a team Arias and just getting a bunch of low batting average guys. There's risk in doing that, because say Arias gets hurt, then your batting average is totally screwed. All your eggs are in that one basket. But a Babbitt.
Yes,
Babbitt is Luis Arias. I like that. We'll see, but
yeah,
you kind of have to either. I don't know. You kind of have to take Schwarber if you go Arias.
You got to go all in and take those guys you said. You have to get them, otherwise it just kind of is pointless. But I will say this much on the player rater: he finished 8th at first base last year, worth $14. So he's a top 10 first baseman in fantasy. You just got to build accordingly. I guess I just don't. I don't know. I don't trust myself to do it or whatnot, but it doesn't feel great. But like I said, smart people do it and they win. So it's just not for me.
Yep.
Who's your second baseman?
All right. I did not think this was like a fade that has now turned into a target for me. Second base, which is that's how things go sometimes. Marcus Semien. We just did our second base rankings this past week for the Patreon. And the biggest thing that I noticed is, the position still sucks. There's a nice kind of swath of players going like 10 to 15th round at second base that I think are pretty decent and you can grab. But I think if you want to go and get a good second base, and Marcus Semien, I think, is almost as good as Ozzy Albies and Jose Altuve going ahead of, going 2 or 3 rounds ahead of him. And Marcus Semien's going in the 7th round. I just think the discount on Marcus Semien is the reason he's a target. And again, this show is targets and fades at ADP. I think Marcus Semien is in decline. I think I had his forecaster box either, or maybe Corbin or Brian did, and I edited it. We put a downside on Marcus Semien in the forecaster, but in the 7th round, like, that's nuts, man. I think that's a gift right now. I think even if Marcus Semien continues to decline, I think playing every day is a skill. The work ethic that he has is a skill, and maybe he's not that, first, second round guy that we saw anymore, but I think you can get 4th, 5th round value out of a 7th round pick and be pretty confident in getting it.
And that Rangers lineup looks very, very good right now.
We'll be better. I think it was a down year it wasn't quite Braves-esque, but it was a down year for Texas collectively in that lineup. So the lineup should get a little better around Semien as well.
For sure. My guy's Luis Garcia Jr., 7th second baseman off the board right now, ADP of around 119. I've been targeting him wherever I can, coming off 18 homers and 22 steals last year, hitting 282. There's always been some hype around him. It's just never fully come to fruition and kind of wishy-washy playing time until the last couple of years. But the power and speed really took off in his age 24 season, extremely young. Projections have him for 18 homers, 16 steals, 278. So he gets you the batting average that I know we talk about a lot, because after the first few rounds, it's harder and harder to find batting average throughout the draft. So he's going to get you that. Like, his stat line reminds me a lot of a Jose Altuve, and you get him later, obviously. You get him much later. You get him at 118 instead of 65. So I'm a big Luis Garcia fan. Now, team context, grain of salt on that one. We'll see how that one pans
Yeah,
out. And it's still not bad. They proved us
it's
wrong
not
last year.
bad.
I
Yeah,
still think CJ Abrams really good. That was a growing pain, like maturity issue with him is what I'll call it. James Wood could make the next step. There's guys there in Washington for sure. So yeah, Luis Garcia Jr., big fan of what he can bring to the table. And honestly, like I think I have him as my fifth second baseman. You have him at 6. So
yeah.
yeah, we're both pretty high on him. And I think if you do wait at second base, that's a guy I would circle to try to make sure you get.
Agreed. If I had him one spot behind you, we're both ahead of ADP. Then I think on Luis Garcia. I think it makes sense. One thing I would just add is Luis Garcia was very much a liability against lefties in the first half, but was a lot better against them in the second half. And I know you can kind of cherry pick some things with first half, second half splits and that sort of thing. But it's something I do look at for someone so young like Luis Garcia, age 24 season last year and his first full season in the big leagues. So was passable against lefties down the stretch last season, which I think bodes very well for playing time. Because I think at some point last year, I was a little worried about Garcia platooning, but I don't know. I think he's locked in at second base. I like him.
For sure. Who's your fade? Because I kind of like this guy, but I'll let you have the floor
I
on
like
this one.
this guy. You kind of like this guy, man. So it's somebody. This guy is someone who hasn't played since August 2023, outside of rehab and the fall league. 15 plate appearances in the fall league or whatever it was, and it's also a guy who has not been able to finish his last 2 seasons, an oblique in 2023, and then last year, of course, the torn labrum and then rib injuries, and that is Matt McLain. I just think, especially going right next to like Marcus Semien at the position, or even Jordan Westbrook, or your guy, Luis Garcia, I just think there's a ton of risk in taking someone with this long of a layoff. And apparently McLain didn't really look that good in his rehab, which whatever, it's, you're just trying to stay healthy. But I think the price is way too high for someone who, even if he does start on opening day and we're good to go, like he's already starting to get that injury prone label for me, given the nature of those 3 major injuries in the last 2 years.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm still intrigued. You get me in Great American if he can stay healthy. I think there's a guy that could get to 2020, and I'm always a fan of that as drafts go on. But we'll save that debate for another day. My fade is Bryson Stott, and this got the Discord in a kind of a tizzy when I did this run.
Explain yourself, my friend.
Well, I went through the Bryson Stott experience last year.
Okay.
So that's part of it. Dude hit 245 after hitting 280, and like I never thought he'd be 280, but let's be real. 11 homers, 32 steals. I guess that's probably who he is in the grand scheme of things. But what got to me eventually is he was platooning a lot in the second half. Injuries kind of got him back into the lineup versus lefties, but there's a reason he platooned. He hit 223 versus lefties, 251 versus righties. He only had 1 of his 11 home runs versus lefties, so the power just disappeared versus left-handed pitching. They had options in Philadelphia, and let me check. Oh, they're building the platoon team for like half their lineup again now. So that is an option.
Max Kepler, come on down.
They have a lot of platoon situations going on there. So that's my biggest thing with Stott. Could he, again, he's only 27. He's not as young as he once thought, but could he get better still? Yes, 27 is not that old. I just think I'll take my chances elsewhere at second base. Now, his ADP is not horrible. It's 173. But, like, I know a lot of people don't like Andres Jimenez. I take Jimenez. I take Rengifo ahead of him. I'd honestly look at Gleyber Torres after him. I think if you like Bryson Stott, you should probably like Nico Horner going 40 picks later, like in the grand scheme of things. So I just the fact they were willing to platoon him, they're still building what looks like part of a platoon roster, and he really could not hit lefties. He was a liability versus lefties. I'm passing on Bryson Stott.
Back-to-back 30 stolen base seasons, man.
Yep.
Pretty good.
And, can't hit lefties.
It's pretty good. All right. Where are we going now? Shortstop?
Yep.
Dude, this one was hard to find a fade, but
I like your target though. I'll say that much.
We'll get to that. This target was like, for me, a slam dunk.
Yeah.
Dansby Swanson Dansby Swanson is roughly the 21st shortstop. This is interesting. 21st shortstop off the board, which is nuts. But going in the 12th round. So there's 21 shortstops going in the first 12 rounds right now in draft and holds. There is a huge gap after Dansby Swanson, a 4-round gap. And your next shortstops are Trevor Story, your guy, Tyler Fitzgerald, our guy Slick Willie Castro, but there's a pretty big drop after Dansby Swanson. So I like getting someone at the end of that kind of quote unquote cliff at the position, and just Dansby himself. Like, he's just so solid. The playing time's going to be there. And of course, it came out that he underwent core surgery. This is weird. He underwent core surgery right after the end of the regular season, which tells me that was obviously bothering him throughout the year if he just went right ahead and did it right at the end of the season. So I do think we can kind of.
But we didn't find out he did it till November. That was the best part about it.
Exactly. Or even, I think, like last week or maybe 2 weeks
early
ago.
December. We've way after it happened. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, the Roto and RotoWire's on top of it. The RotoWire entries December 7th that Swanson had core injury in early October. So for all those reasons, the consistency, the fact that I think we can kind of discount Dansby Swanson's bad. But kind of interestingly, Swanson, I think, ran a ton at the end of the year, but I think that core injury thing was obviously going on beneath the scenes if he wanted to get it cleaned up right after the season. So I think Dansby Swanson is like a pretty easy take if you're going to wait on shortstop or get your middle infield at shortstop, which I highly recommend given the state of the second base position.
Yeah, I like Swanson a lot. He is definitely on the radar every draft as long as someone else doesn't take him ahead of me, but I do like him quite a bit. This one, it's a guy that's growing on me, and people might have heard my stat rant and think this is the same stat line, but I'll get my argument here. Anthony Volpe is a guy that I'm starting to slowly buy in on for a couple reasons. The ADP of 139 is nice. I still like your ADP for Swanson's better, but 139, if you still need a shortstop one, I think that's a very palatable shortstop one. He had 28 steals last year, only 12 homers. He had 21 homers and 24 steals the year before, but his average went from 209 to 243. His strikeout rate dropped 5% this past year, which I like to see. So the power disappeared, but the plate skills, potentially like the plate discipline, got better. Like his barrel rate dropped 5%. His hard hit rate dropped 8%. So those are questionable situations. But his ground ball rate also went up 9%. So there's like other factors in play there. Ground ball rate goes up. Obviously, you're not going to barrel the ball as much. It's just common sense on how it works. But the other part I like a lot about Anthony Volpe, the dude is going to be 24. He's had 2 full seasons in the bigs in his age 22 and 23 season. He's going to be 24. He's going to be in a very, very, very good New York Yankees lineup still. I think there's room for growth with Volpe. If he can somehow become like a 255, 260 hitter, I think we're back to like a 2020, 2030 type guy. Maybe I'm overstating what I think he can be, but to me, there's a lot to like with Anthony Volpe. He just he's young, and I'm just waiting for that consistent year to come into fruition, and I'm willing to start taking a chance on him with that ADP.
So, like, I'm probably not ending up with much Volpe because I like the guys around him better. I mean, I'll ask you, like, do you? And I'm looking at your Patreon rankings right now, so I kind of know the answer. But for the listeners out there, like, would you take Dansby or Volpe straight up?
Based on the rankings, I would take Volpe, but I have Swanson high too. Like, he's 2 spots behind, so like straight up, I'd probably take Volpe based on my rankings. Is what I have to say. Yes, but it's a great. They're very, very close. Let's put it that way.
I mean, my thing with Volpe is like I'm probably I like a few guys. Like I maybe Bo Bichette's a separate debate for another show. I like Bo Bichette's going after Volpe. I like Bichette. Alexander Bogarts more than Volpe, and then obviously I like Swanson more than Volpe as well. So like I'm fine with Volpe. It's just like I think there are better options going around him or after him in drafts right now.
Like if I had to make the argument between Volpe and Swanson, it'd be team context between the two. Cubs are still good. Don't get me wrong, but that Yankees team on paper,
they lost Soto.
Oh God forbid! But they added Bellinger, didn't you hear? And they're going to add a first base. Like their team is loaded. It's stupid. So I'm still pretty optimistic on that one. Maybe I'm crazy. Tazawa will tell me I'm wrong, but Mr. DuPont himself. But it's the price tag, and he's young. I think there's another level to this kid. So that's what I'm looking at. But I agree. It just shows the embarrassment of riches at shortstop potentially. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and it really is because I was, and again, we for this exercise we're staying within the top 200 ADP. I struggled to find a fade.
Real quick before you go to fade, Michael C says I take Win over both, better batting average and Dansby, better like the lineup. I would take Win over both as well. Win's past 200 though. Win is literally we've talked about. I've said he's this year's Zach Neto. Like he is one of my favorite targets, period, at the position if I can get away with it. I got to see where I had him ranked.
I need to take a closer
12th.
look at Wynn. Yeah, you've got him. You've got him 12th. I've got him 20th.
Yeah.
So I need to take a deeper dive on Mason Wynn.
Yeah, I'm a big Mason Wynn fan. I wanted to put him higher in my rankings. I just couldn't bring myself to it to be like realistic. But I'm very, very high on Mason Wynn.
80 by ADP, he's 20th and Swanson 21st. So at least a few days ago. So.
Yeah. All right, sorry, your fade at the shortstop.
No,
position.
just Mason Wynn's a good call out. Like just another example of you can wait at shortstop and get one. But my fade before I bring him up, it was just very hard to find a shortstop fade for me. I think in drafts right now, I did not do this in the current draft and hold I'm in, and I'm paying for it. I'm trying to get 2 of those top 21 shortstops, ending with Swanson, Mason Wynn, because.
And I'm sorry, I'm going to bug you again here. This is the comment you just made there, top of the first, top 21s. And this guy's not even close to that. He is the 10th off the board. That's the reason I'm still very, very high on Willy Adames. I just want to bring that back because people have clowned on that. But trying to get 2 at the position, if you're really aggressive and Willy Adames is now your middle infielder, that's pretty sweet.
Yeah. Even post-trade, Willy Adames is pretty much
a little different.
The projections are right on par with where he's going, though. So
yeah, which is perfect. That's fine. So sorry, as you were.
No, my fade is when in doubt, go with Corey Seager. Mostly because he had 2 hernia surgeries last year, one that delayed his start to the season, probably played through it and returned earlier than he should have, but then had another one to end the season. And if you don't, I say this kind of every year, if you don't get stolen bases at shortstop, which Seager does not provide that, you just need to, I'm not saying it's a bad pick. You just need to think about that and account for it at other positions. Take a Spencer Steer at first base, a Real Muto at catcher. Those are the kinds of sacrifices you might have to make by taking Corey Seager as what's he going? He's going in the 3rd round. That's the other thing, is the price on Seager is pretty high. So injury man, Corey Seager in the first 3 rounds, I'm going to be out on.
Yep, I've been anti-Seager forever. It's kind of like my Luis Ariz take. Same thing for me. Yeah. But this one's fun because we just talked about I had Wynn 12th, you had Wynn 20th. You have Ezequiel Tovar 12th. I have Ezequiel Tovar 20th.
I smell
Ezequiel Tovar is my fade. He's actually 12th. He's the 12th shortstop off the board at 122 ADP. I was all in on Tovar last year. 26 homers is good. 269, really good as well. But for me at the shortstop position, I want stolen bases. And I know you can build stolen bases elsewhere. I get it. But he doesn't run. 6 steals last year. 6 whole stolen bases in 157 games. He had 11 the year before. I think he'll be a pretty good batting average guy. I think the power is pretty good in that regard. But, I don't even know how much I want to trust the power, honestly. A 40% hit rate, it's good, but is that going to be consistently good enough type thing for the power? But a lot of it to me, with Tovar, he doesn't run. I need him to run for the shortstops going in that range of the draft. Again, Volpe, he could be a 30 stolen base guy. You got McLean, he's 20 stolen base if he's healthy. Adames is a question. That's fair. But going down Bichette, maybe not. Bogarts probably gets you at 10, 15. Xavier Edwards gets you a ton. You got Pena. Those guys all run. Neto, Wynn, they all run. Tovar does not. And that just doesn't do it for me.
Yeah. We did see so Ben Tidd put this in the Discord that
about the team,
about the team context, and who knows, but this was all around Thairo Estrada signing with Colorado. But there's a kind of a blurb in there that Ben put. Manager Bud Black said the club would like to be more aggressive on the base pass moving forward, which is kind of like a de facto December line you just want to say as a manager. I even responded to that in the Discord. Because Tovar for his career is what's it at? Yeah, he's 17 for 27 career on the base pass, which is bad. That's 63%. And your break-even point in the big leagues to make it worthwhile to steal bases is mid 70% success rate. So even if Colorado wants to run more, Ezequiel Tovar, he's got raw speed, but he needs to learn how to use it if he wants to be able to run. So I'm with you. I think for now we have to assume another single stolen base total for Tovar, and that is tough. So I don't know. Why do I have him 12th?
No, that's what I got to tell Ben when we do our debates right now. This is what I love about talking about like on this show and other shows is our rankings are so fresh and young. They're going to change so much by
They
like
will.
March.
Yes.
That's what's just fun about it. We're going off initial stuff, and then you dig in more by talking it out. And I've already wanted to change stuff, and I'm waiting until we release them all to start changing things. So
Yeah. Did take a step forward in the power. That's probably why. I mean, 26 home runs last year.
That's
for
good.
Tovar.
270, basically 26. That's a hell of a season. There's no denying that.
Yeah. But interesting. Again, like so many options at shortstop. It's nuts in those middle rounds.
Who are you targeting at third base?
I don't know.
I love it. I love the target.
I know. As you smile, it's Matt Chapman. I just think Matt Chapman coming off a really good year, and yes, I don't think the stolen bases will be what they were last year for Matt Chapman. I just think someone going in the 10th round is a fine pick at third base. Like I just the projections have him 12 spots better than that than his ADP right now, and third base isn't the best position out there. It's a nice little group of players that I like going around Chapman. It's Bregman, Rengifo. I kind of like Miguel Garcia, but different types of players. I just think Matt Chapman, if I think he still will run a little bit next season, and all of a sudden is like a 4.5 category guy, that half category being batting average. I think that's probably the thing that he least brings to the table. But I just think Matt Chapman had a great year last year. He's back where he belongs, right? And is not really that expensive in drafts. A 10th round price for Chapman and 15 teamers is pretty palatable if you're waiting at third base.
Yeah, I got no problem with Chapman. I think he's really good. I could see him going in a grouping there that depending on what you need, go for it because not many of them run at that point. So if he runs, he catapults this range.
My before you go, I did not take this guy as a target because I knew you wanted him, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that because I almost put him at first base for fun, but then I'm like, nah, I'll save him for third base because Ryan didn't pick him either place. So good to know you're looking at it. Appreciate that. A guy that we've mentioned 3 straight years at 250. He is the new Chris Davis. We've mentioned that a few times on these shows. A guy that's hit 29 home runs last year, 34 the year before. A guy that is going to Texas now in a much better lineup than that cavernous bad lineup in Miami, not to mention the White Sox, Jake Burger. Jake Burger absolutely loved me some Burger time. I will take all the Jake Burger I can possibly get. I have him 10th on the board. You have him 11th right now. And he's 10th at an ADP of 126. I want to move him up still, but 250 is not ideal. If he struggles at all, this is not great. But I think there's a ceiling to Jake Burger also that we have not seen yet in that lineup. So yeah, give me all the Jake Burger. We've talked about Jake Burger so much, but I love him, and he is a definite. Plus, the first base, third base is pretty darn awesome as well.
Yeah, and Jake Burger is actually the reason for my fade at third base, which is someone I think is very comparable, like a meh batting average, 30 home run power, 30 plus home run power maybe, and that's Mark Vientos is my fade. The problem is Vientos is going 3 rounds before Jake Burger. You could also take a Matt Chapman, similar profile to Vientos, maybe not as much power as Vientos, but has more stolen bases to back that up. I just think Mark Vientos, there are some, I think, pretty major plate approach issues there. I'm not doubting the power at all. Projections have Mark Vientos hitting like 245, and to hit 245 and be a 6th round pick, you've got to have like a ton of power, and maybe eclipse, which he does. maybe that happens, but I just think you can get similar Mark Vientos's later in the draft. And I think in the second full season in the big leagues, I think those holes in Vientos's plate approach will be much more exploitable and out there now that the book has grown on him in year 2.
Yeah, that's fair. Like I love Vientos' talent. I understand there's concerns as well. So I will have some shares, but I'm not as aggressive as I was say last year when he was free in a DC because who knows what he was doing. Loved that. Not so much right now. Type there. Like in a redraft, I might be a little more into a Mark Vientos, maybe, but we'll wait and see how ADP shakes out towards redraft season because we're not. I'm insane when it comes to drafting, but not that insane just yet.
There are redraft leagues out there.
I know. That's why I clarified it before I said like I'm at least taking it a little slow in that regard. Scott Burks, Ryan's fading Vientos because he doesn't score runs.
That's right. Yeah, freaking Vientos needed 1 run from the damn guy in his doubleheader last year.
Yep. Did not
He
have.
scored about 20 in the postseason. So not a reason why I'm fading, but I don't hold grudges.
I do. My guy stings because I have always been team Jazz Chisholm. I've worn the shirt on the show. I love Jazz Chisholm. For me, it's just, and I have him second in our rankings because I think he is that good. But the reason I'm going to fade him is I'm not paying a second round ADP for him. That's the kicker. Like, I love Jazz Chisholm. We've always said, what if he plays the full season? We saw 147 games last year. We saw 24 homers, 40 stolen bases, 256. That's fine. I feel like I need like 100 runs or 100 RBIs at the third base position if you're taking him that early. I need at least like 4 really strong categories from Jazz Chisholm. And again, you could build around it. I'm not saying you can't. It's also the injury liability. Like, he did it for one season. That's awesome. That's great. I hope he stays healthy. I'm not rooting for him to get hurt. I'm just being a realist in this situation. And in the middle of round 2, I'm either taking another big outfielder, or I'm taking my SP1, or I'm doing something in that regard, or I'm taking a Riley or somebody, an Olsen, a big power bat. I'm not taking a big speed question mark with Jazz Chisholm. So that's my fade for him. It's not like a negative on his skill set. It's more, I just don't think he's going to live up to that price tag back-to-back seasons, and that sucks.
I think he would if he plays another full season, which he might.
Agreed.
But
Agreed.
That's
100%.
that's the biggest thing, is all of a sudden, now that he's had one full healthy season, is Jazz Chisholm no longer injury prone? And do we just forget about the 383 plate appearances in 2023, the 240 plate appearances the year before that? Do we forget about that and make that pick in the second round? I'm with you. I just listened to James Anderson on the RotoWire podcast. He had Dr. Dave McDonald on, and they talked obviously about Jazz Chisholm, as you would imagine, with Dr. Dave's fades, and they just made some really good points. It just, in general, like, you're taking what could still be an injury-prone player coming off a career year and the only full season that he's ever stayed healthy in the second round. So,
like I said, I hope he proves me wrong. I hope he.
Oh yeah,
because
dude,
I love Jazz.
And he's a unicorn, man. To be third base outfield with that many steals, like, from a team build standpoint, you have so much flexibility and more options if you take Jazz. So I am rooting for him as well.
And there's a world where he might play second base right now with their layout. They might put Cabrera out there.
Dude, like, go over, that's
like
right.
he could get the whole cha-cha in middle infield, corner infield, outfield, and be the guy. Be like what the mascot is minus the ADP. So yeah, I love him. I hope he proves me wrong, but I'm just not going to pay that price.
Yep. All right. Let's see. Target for outfield. Teoscar is, I think, easily one of the best values out there. Even if he doesn't go to the Dodgers, it's another one of those anybody but Seattle things. And Teoscar, trust me, is not going back to Seattle after what we saw from him. So I think Teoscar Hernandez, where he's going in drafts, I think there's some free agent discount. I mean, he's not even that old. I think the age 32 season for Teoscar, and he is a projected like top 35 hitter, going right kind of top 50 in terms of hitters. And so just from a projection standpoint, I think Teoscar is a pretty easy type of hitter to project, depending where he lands with park factors and things like that. Like, it just screams value to me right now. He sticks out.
Yeah, I got nothing against that. We talked about, we almost had the same conversation with Teoscar last year. So yes, we love him pretty much, like you said, any ballpark but Seattle. And as you mentioned, that did not go well. So I'd be shocked. Like, they'd have to back up a Brinks truck, which Seattle ain't doing. So I think we're pretty safe in that regard.
Yep. My
player goes the next outfielder off the board right after him, 2 picks later. And it's a guy I know you love as well. I almost thought you would have picked him, but Teoscar is awesome as well. And that's Seiya Suzuki. I actually, in my first 6 drafts, I have him in half of my leagues already. That's not counting underdog. I have a lot of underdog shares as well. I love Seiya. He's had the oblique injury twice, 132, 138 games still. Last year hit 283. Year before hit 285, 20 homers, 21. He had 16 steals last year. Like, stat lines are almost identical across the board outside of steals. We've talked about it, and it's just like the year before. First half, he was hurt to start the year. Second half, he flourished. He hit 300 in the second half last year, 8 home runs in 60 games. He had 13 in the first half, though. So the power is better in the first half, average better in the second half, ran more, actually kind of even both ways through. I just love Seiya. A full season of Seiya can be amazing. I know we're hoping for you haven't seen it in 2 years, but even like the 137 games, still a really good season, and I'll take that all day with Seiya Suzuki. So yeah, it's a guy I'm targeting quite a bit. It's just to me, it's a great floor with a ceiling we have not seen yet.
How worried are you about? Because that's the reason I didn't put Seiya. Is how worried are you about the oblique and the injuries? Like it sucks that it's happened 2 years in a row. But on the flip side, it happened, like you said, early in the season, and he's finished each of the last 2 seasons very strong. So is that just a fluky thing a couple years in a row? What, cold in Chicago early in the season? I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not as worried. Maybe I should be, but I'm not because it's like you said, the fact he finishes that way. Maybe he figures out a
Yeah.
different regiment this offseason to be prepped for that, like working the core better. I don't know. But I also think the injury concerns are baked into the price. I think if we saw full years of Seiya, he wouldn't be going to 82
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course.
because he could be a
Absolutely.
2025 guy. Like, so I think it's baked into the price where I'm willing to take that.
All right. Yeah, I'm with you. I feel like I was all over Suzuki. He was one of my
You were.
favorite guys last year. I'm a little bit more off on him this year, but that I will probably. You make a very good point, my friend.
Thank
So.
you. Thank you. All
And
right.
usually when you persuade me back onto guys, it works out.
Wow, I'm gonna clip this. All right, take the
I gotta
easy.
teach you how first.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. Why don't you explain to us the easiest fade in the century that so many
Yeah.
people are fading this year, and we're all gonna probably get burned since we're all fading this person.
Right. I mean, it's a little tougher to fade this year because the price is a lot better. I believe it's a 5th round. No, 7th round.
It's later than the guys we just talked about.
Jesus. It's a 7th round price on Luis Robert. So it is at a point in the draft where it's still a little early for me to want to take a risk, but it's at a point in the draft where I get it. But Luis Robert still, it's just for me, I mean, he's never had 600 plate appearances in a season. 590s is his career high. Counting minor leagues, that's the only season he's had over 450 plate appearances. So until Luis Robert can stay healthy for a full season, until he gets traded out of the south side of Chicago, the power collapse last season post injury was very rough too. So and he's not like super young anymore. It's age 27 season to where like have we already seen the best of Luis Robert? So yeah, an easy fade for me. Again, even in the 7th round, I get it if you want to take a shot, but for me, that's still too early to go there.
Yeah, I got not a whole lot more to add. Just dude can't stay healthy. It's crazy, and the team context sucks. So yeah, a lot of concerns there. My fade was tricky because, like, in reality, you're taking 5 outfielders. You're not probably fading most of these guys early on. Like, you might have certain arguments here and there, but it was tricky. I'm going with Lane Thomas. And again, this could be because I had Lane Thomas in a lot of places last year. Lane Thomas ADP of about 170. Lane Thomas is so good when he got traded to Cleveland. He got benched for his right-handed pitching because let me tell you, dude hit 214 versus right-handed pitching last year. Did have 11 home runs out of his 15, though. I'll say that much. Also had 346 at bats compared to 126 against lefties. But dude hit 302 versus lefties, 4 home runs. So that's a plus. As a whole, a big time down season. Still has power and speed. Projections love him. So this is one that could easily come back and bite me in the rear end. There's no denying that. But I think it's one of those deals again. Like he struck out almost 29% of the time versus righties last year compared to 19% versus lefties. You just go down the splits, like the OBPs, the slugging, the OPSs. It's dreadful. He had an 82 WRC plus for his righties, 146 versus lefties. Like it's a massive split situation. Now we'll see if the Guardians do anything about that. Right now, if you believe roster resource, again, grain of salt this time of year, he's not platooning. I don't believe that. They showed they would do it this past year. Postseason, he was better. So maybe they go back to against it. But I'm just in that area of the draft. I'm just not going to take the wishy-washy with Lane Thomas. I might regret it. I'm going to go elsewhere, though.
So for all the crap you just talked about Lane Thomas and how awful of a season he had, yada, yada, he still had 15 home runs, 32 steals. That's a pretty good, awful season if you're Lane Thomas. September had 6 home runs at 264, kind of turned things around at the end there. I hear you on the platoon risk. If that happens, obviously, if Lane Thomas is not playing against right-handed pitching, that's a risk. I think it's a buying op. I think this is someone we disagree on. I just think the track record's there for him to say this was a down year and he bounces back. He's young enough to do it.
That stat line you just read off. Can you think of a player that we talked about earlier in the show that I'm also fading?
What?
Bryson
15
Stott.
homers?
Bryson Stott, same stat line.
Yeah, maybe you shouldn't fade guys who hit 15 home runs and still 30 stolen bases.
And have a batting average that just destroys your entire chance of winning a league. That sounds like a great idea.
He had 237. That's not destruction.
What is it? What's the word you're looking for?
It's not destruction. Maybe.
I'm not mad. I'm disappointed. Or how's this one go?
I mean, hit 268 the year before that. Split the difference. 250. It's not going to. That's fine. That's league average for it.
I'm very concerned about the platoons because he was horrific versus righties.
I think that's your angle. If you're fading Link Thomas, I think that's a valid reason to do it. Yeah, we'll see what happens with the Guardians if they do it, but I don't mind Lane Thomas. We'll just say that. I sense a beer bet coming if that doesn't change. We will only do beer bets in the springtime. It's too early for that.
Way too early for that. All right, let's head to the mound. Who's your starting pitcher? Oh, wait.
Well, I think you've got support as I try and read the chat. I don't get Lane's price. Power has always been dubious. Cleveland is clearly not happy with them. So I'm fighting 1-on-2 here. Good point.
Team Bubba.
Yeah.
All right. Who's your starting pitcher on this one? Because there's some fun ones on this list.
Yeah, I mean, we could have picked a bunch, but I'll go one that's going early, and for me that's Framber Valdez. I think is an ace going in the 5th round of drafts right now. I actually have Framber Valdez as my number right now, number 7 starting pitcher in my rankings. I think he's a top 10 pitcher. I think the changes that he made to throw more changeups late in the season that drove that late strikeout rate spike, if that sticks, that's the missing piece for Framber Valdez, who gets ground balls galore, quality starts galore. It's just the strikeouts haven't been there. If the strikeouts stay, what we saw in the second half with Framber Valdez, and I don't think there's reason for him to go away from that new pitch mix in the second half, I think you've got a top 10 starter. I hope Houston doesn't destroy the team around him. And then the win potential is low, but I'm going to ignore that for now and say Framber Valdez is my favorite target. If you're going 3 hitters, 4 hitters, or 3 hitters in a closer in draft and holds, which is what I've been doing on a bunch of teams, Framber Valdez is right there for you in the 5th round, and I think you can take him as your SP1.
Yeah, zero problems with Framber. Love Framber. Like you mentioned, the changes he made in the second, because there was a stretch there where we're like, where is Framber Valdez? What are we doing here? So
yes,
it was bad.
It was bad.
So yeah, what you mentioned is something we talk about when we look at a lot of bloom boards and stuff, especially in the off season, like guys that finish strong type stuff, and you nailed it with that. So yeah, big agreement with you on that one. For me, there's one that I just can't wrap my brain around right now. How is Frederick Peralta ADP of 91? I understand like maybe the ratios aren't elite, but 3.6 ERA this past year, 3.86, 3.58. Those are the last 3 years. If you go 2.81, 3.99, none of those crush you. The whip was 1.21. That's not great, but 112, 104, 0.97, 116. That's been great. K to walk was 18.2. You'd want more. I get it. Numbers I look at, though, he had 200 strikeouts for the 2nd straight season. He's had 195 or more in 3 out of the last 4. We talk about how strikeouts are hard to find as you get later in the draft. He gets those. We saw him throw 173 innings last year after 165 the year before because there were concerns about health at one point. That's back-to-back really strong innings years. He's the ace of the Brewers, so he's going to be out there every 5th day, barring an injury. I'm just confused. Like, to be able to get that many strikeouts with ratios that will not crush you, I am a tremendous Peralta fan. If you're aggressive on pitching, I think I have one league where I have him as, I think it was the SP3. Like, wow. you can really, or if you want to wait on pitching as an SP2, I'll take Peralta. We were taking him as an SP1 last year. So I guess that's where I'm trying to wrap my head around. Is it just because of the ratios that people are down on him? I just don't get the disdain, I guess, for Freddie. Like Tanner Bybee, I love. Joe Ryan, what's with his shoulder? We'll get to him in a minute. Luis Castillo, Aaron Nola, Bailey, like all these guys ahead of Freddie Peralta, who in a vacuum, like maybe they're similar, but I also think Peralta's strikeout ceiling just kind of, I don't know. I'm a big Peralta guy. I'm just confused by the pricing.
and other names around him. Hunter Green, Grayson Rodriguez, like some injury risks around that. So Freddie Peralta, I don't know. So we had his forecaster box. Corbin had his forecaster box, and the strikeout rate like went down a ton in the second half from first to second half. I think that's maybe why Freddie, because I agree with you. I'm just kind of looking for reasons why we would fade Freddie. That would stick out to me. However, like the velocity was the exact same first and second half. I don't think it was any kind of injury or anything like that. So I'm with you, man. I mean, how many pitchers have back-to-back 200 strikeout seasons?
That's my biggest thing.
Like,
even if you
get your Ks.
Even if he regresses a bit to like 180, even at that ADP to get 180 Ks, that's still very good as you go down the draft board. Like that's
and safe ratios, like very safe. Like 4 years, he's never had an ERA under 4, at least since the COVID season.
That's what I'm saying. Like I just can't wrap my head around this quote unquote stability, which is pitchers. There's never stability, but you know what I'm trying to say. I was confused by the ADP.
Yeah, no, I had not bolded Freddie Peralta on my sheet for some reason, and that has changed.
Yeah. All right. Who's your fade? Because we both have guys from the same team.
This one surprised me. I thought I would be very high on this man.
Yes, I was surprised.
Were you? Okay. This surprised me too. I thought I would love Bryce Miller going into the season. I thought what Bryce Miller did was a huge step forward last season. 180 innings, 294 ERA. Second half last year, 184 ERA. Like, was just a machine. But when you dig in, man, like, it's a league average strikeout rate. It's a league average whiff rate. Walks are pretty good, but like there's no real standout skill for Bryce Miller. The sub 3 ERA last year was not deserved at all. HQ's expected ERA was up closer to 4, so pretty much a full run gap, which is very rare to see between ERA and xERA. Got very fortunate with the BABIP. I just don't think, and I think another reason why I wanted to take Bryce Miller is I didn't want to just take another like injury guy, because starting pitchers, like, there's so many out there that like I could have put Hunter Green on here, but I wanted to do someone where injury wasn't a concern relatively, and Bryce Miller sticks out. Like you would think, and at an age 25 season, that big of a step forward would be supported by the skills. And even though he added a new splitter and like that was a pretty good pitch, like the strikeouts weren't there and the whiffs weren't there. And when those aren't there and you have that much of a gap between skills and results, like I think that's coming back for Bryce Miller next year. So I was surprised too, but I want to like him a lot more. And I don't see it right now.
All valid arguments. I'm still optimistic on Bryce Miller, but I get with what you're saying. I'm not going to deny any of that. I guess to me, it's in my brain, it's a young kid that could continue to develop a pitch.
Oh, he absolutely could.
I'm not disagreeing with you by any means.
I mean, the other thing too, he's going right, and this is after, but he is going after. He's right after Framber Valdez, Shota Imanaga, Pablo Lopez, like that.
Before Freddie Peralta, what the heck?
Before Freddie, like I would take Freddie Peralta. Yes, I would take Bailey Ober over Bryce Miller. So it's also a bit the price and some of the other options you have there.
Totally fair. All right, for me, sticking with the same team is Brian Wu. This one should be more easy for guys to understand here, but Wu's got an ADP of 141. Wu basically had his arm fall off 2 or 3 times last year, but still didn't really missed maybe 1 or 2 starts. Dude made 22 starts, still threw 121 innings, 2.89 ERA, which is outstanding. And you'd think there's like, oh, there's no way. But, you know, when you look at the Sierra was 3.75, which is not horrible. Dude relied on, and he had a whip of 0.9, but he relied on his command, which he's, a 2.8 walk rate. He had in 2023, he had an 8.4% at the big league level. He's been 7 or higher pretty much at all stops in the minors, where he's put a decent duration at a stop in the minors. So I just don't know how the walk rate stays intact there, which will obviously decrease the whip and lead to other potential issues. He's not a big strikeout guy. And I just gave you my case on why I like Peralta as ADP. If you like, I know strikeouts go down as you go down ADP, but at 141, it shouldn't like fall off the map either. That shouldn't be the kind of guy you're going for there. Like you got Jack Flaherty, you got Robbie Ray, even Kodai Senga if healthy. I'd take Sandy Alcantara ahead of him. Like there's all these dudes that'll strike guys out. Like there's a world where Luke Weaver might have more Ks than Brian Wu by the end of the season, and he's not even a starter. So because he's not the closer anymore, Weaver could be a 2-inning guy. So I'm saying like he could get there. But yeah, Woo's just off the board between lack of strikeouts. I don't think the walks stay that way, and the injury concerns. I just feel like that arm. It feels like was it Tanaka? A couple years back just wouldn't get it, and then he finally just bounced. It just didn't work anymore. He's too young for that, but I think surgery's coming sooner than later.
I just get ticking time bomb vibes with Brian Woo. So it's that. I don't understand why. I mean, I know I bagged Casas earlier. Like, if I'm the Mariners, I'm trading Woo for Casas. I don't know if that was an actual thing out there or not, but that was rumored. Or like Bryce Miller, I would have done that if I'm Seattle.
Yeah, the Woo thing, I'm like, how did they not pull that trigger? Like that
which makes me think. I don't know if that was. I don't know. We're all just going off of like beat reporter tweets, which. But yeah, when I saw that too, I was like, man, I would take Triston Casas for Brian Woo immediately
in a heartbeat.
So
all right, who's your relief pitcher target?
I mean, nothing.
I like
nothing sexy here except for the man himself, and that's Big Kenley Jansen, who I think it's just the ultimate like closer free agent discount right now. Kenley Jansen's going in the 13th round, which may sound somewhat early if you haven't been drafting holds right now. Kenley Jansen is the 22nd reliever off the board in recent drafts. And so that means he's like your closer too. You can wait on closer and still get someone who I'm very confident will sign somewhere and be the closer. Kenley Jansen's not going to sign and not be the closer. He's Kenley Jansen, and he's still pretty good. So maybe he doesn't last a full season again or whatever. Maybe you get like 3/4 of a season out of him, but I think that is a much better value proposition than taking like David Bednar, Michael Kopech, Porter Hodge, Alexis Diaz, who are all going ahead of Kenley Jansen.
Yep. No, I've always been Team Kenley. I've always said it's the consistent saves. The ratio's gotten slightly worse, still good. Strikeouts gone down just a little, but he's still getting you what you target him for, and the price gets cheaper and cheaper. So,
do you think there's risk he doesn't sign as a closer?
I would be shocked if he doesn't.
I would.
At his age, like he'd probably rather retire than sign as a setup man.
Right.
Yeah, I'd be shocked. Mine's not as cheap as Kenley, but it's a guy I know we talked about. That's Raisel Iglesias, ADP of 55. This guy to me is probably one of the top closers in all of baseball, consistent wise. Picked up 34 saves again last year. He basically has 30 or more saves, and every year he's been the closer the whole season since you get 28 or more since 2017. He had 8 in the COVID year. He had 17 in 2022 because he got traded to the Braves and was the setup man. He's been a beast. Ratios have been sub 3 ERA every year since 2016, except for 2019. That's pretty good. Low whips, strikeouts are good. Braves are still going to be very, very good. I love Iglesias. Like I know people like Felix Bautista. I'll take Iglesias over Felix. I'll take him over Ryan Helsley. Devin Williams is a conversation. Mason Miller I like a lot, but I'd move Iglesias up the board. Let's put it that way. And I have no problem. I think I actually took Iglesias in my recent DC ahead of a couple of those guys I just mentioned. So I'm a big Raisel Iglesias fan. He's a target of mine. To me, he's kind of the end of that closer 1 tier for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'd add is you have to pay up for Raisel Iglesias. I mean, it's a 4th round pick, maybe your first starting pitcher, or your first pitcher. So just know that. But yeah, I don't think for as volatile as the position is, like I take Raisel Iglesias over Edwin Diaz. I think. Yes, I'm with you. Earlier in the round,
he is just, if he's healthy, he is one of the most consistent studs we've seen in a long time.
Yep. All right, this one for me is just a hunch. Oh, man, you're fading someone I just drafted. I just saw the sheet. Let's go.
Giddy up.
I will, as I tease that, this is just a hunch, but I don't think Porter Hodge is going to be the opening day closer for the Cubs. I think they're going to sign, and I kind of put this theory out there before the Bellinger trade, so maybe it's not quite as valid anymore. But I think with the Kyle Tucker thing, the Cubs are in it for this year. They're pushing their chips in, and I think if you're pushing your chips in, there's with so many free agent closers available, I think you go closer and get somebody with more experience than Porter Hodge. So I think Porter Hodge himself, like the K's are awesome, a little bit of some control issues, but just hasn't been the guy for that long. And I think I just have a hunch again that the Cubs bring in someone, and there's risk that you're spending a where the hell's Porter Hodge going? He's not cheap. He's like 11th round, 11th, 12th round. There's risk that you get like nothing from that. So going 2 rounds before Kenley Jansen, I would take Jansen straight up over Hodge right now.
Yeah, they've already rumored Finnegan is of interest in Chicago, which would make a ton of sense.
Right.
So,
right.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Like, I like Hodge's skill set, but I think they, like you said, his youth, he had a little experience last year, but is it enough for a team trying to make a push? Probably not.
Right.
All right. But the thing with Hodge, what I'll say is they might bring in a closer for like a 1-year deal. If they struggle in the first half, they trade him and Hodge closes again in the second half. So in a DC, the price tag is steep, but I could still see a window where Hodge gets you 10 to 15 saves. I'll say that much. All right. Robert Suarez is my fade at the position.
What's up, man? What the hell?
It was great when he was free last year, but now he's got an ADP of 66. The 34-year-old Robert Suarez, he had a 2.77 ERA last year. Don't see that one happening. The whip of 105, don't see that happening. Doesn't strike out guys like you want from a closer. 23% K rate, but a 17% K to walk after a 13% K to walk the previous season. He made a tremendous jump in his overall production, skill set, you name it, this in just from 23 to 24. And the Padres have already rumored he's on the trading block. And they've rumored looking at other clothes. If you read the news and notes,
what are you talking about? Trading block.
You would know these things. He was available in trades already, and they've been talking about potential other clothes like Kenley Jansen could slide in there or someone else. So Robert Suarez could prove me wrong. He really could. I just don't think he's the closer for the full season in San Diego, and that is my concern. I'd rather have Johan Duran, who I'm not a big fan of, but ahead of him. I'd love Andres Munoz ahead of him. And this is why I'm taking Raisel Iglesias 10 picks earlier.
Yeah. So the reason I took Robert Suarez in the current draft I'm in, I believe it was the end of the 5th round, something like that. It was like the 11th closer off the board. For me, there's like a cliff at the position right after that, because after Suarez, there's nobody until your guy Ryan Walker, Lucas Erceg, Kirby Yates, like Alexis Diaz, the aforementioned Porter Hodge. Like, those are the closers going after Robert Suarez. I fully agree. I would take Munoz, Duran over Suarez, but they're going slightly ahead of Suarez as they should. So for me, it was kind of like I won't say a panic pick, but maybe it was. Just trying to get that last, like, I think, locked in closer, and then you spew these lies that Kenley Jansen's coming in and gonna boot him from the role. But that was my rationale.
I have not seen moves on Kenley. I just threw that part in there for fun. Okay. I was saying like a Kenley Jansen. Yeah. But what I love
was that what was that in part 4, 5, 6?
I don't remember. Okay. But it all blurs together eventually. The one thing I remember from our meatball live stream for the first 11 rounds, I believe it was, when like midway through, James Anderson goes, "I can't believe I just drafted Robert Suarez." That's the one thing he said in the village. that sticks in the back of my mind every time.
And he did it it was funny. And again, that meatball draft is August, so there's 2 whole months after that. That was the end of the 4th round, and I took Munoz after that in the 5th round. So that makes me feel pretty good.
Things change.
Trying to find where's his off-season news and notes. Where the hell? Part 5. He's not in part 6. Part 5.
He's not in any of them.
Oh, he's not.
No, I'm joking with you. I've read stuff on it, but I wasn't locked in enough to put it in one of those things. Good. It was just it was rumors. I'm not writing up every rumor that comes out on Twitter. There's nothing that's not even happening.
Problem is now you can screw with me and say, yeah, I put that in the news and notes.
Oh, I know. Very well aware. All right. Any final thoughts on our targets and fades? We have a couple listener questions to add to, but that was a fun little exercise. I think gives us a little the listeners a little preview to what we got coming up in our position previews / the Patreon debates, because we kind of gave teases to debates, not on purpose, but we kind of talked things out a little bit. That'll be more in depth and more back and forth on the debate shows. But anything else for the listeners?
No, just let us know how you all like the format. Like I for me, it's valuable to go back and forth and not just agree with you on every single thing. I think we both learn that way, and I think listeners ultimately get a better product from that. And I think also, like, like our back and forth on Ezekiel Tovar. Like I am very much willing to have my mind changed this early. Like I am not locked into a lot of this stuff. So for me, at least selfishly, it's super valuable to kind of talk through some of this stuff with you. And again, if we don't agree on a guy, we'll let each other know, which I think is good.
It's very good because, like you said, it could change us for the good at times and help us out. Also for the listeners, because the other thing is we put our rankings out and people to see them numbered and they'll ask questions, and that's totally fine and fair. And I don't take any offense to any of it at all, being dead serious there. But the reason I love doing podcasts is because it's a platform to talk it out where you can't really do that so simply. So at least like when I say Jazz Chisholm, he's my second ranked guy, but he's a fade. Well, here you go. This is why, like, I believe he's the second, third baseman if he's healthy. But if he's healthy, stuff like that is where this platform is why I love podcasting so much, is you can get so much more accomplished and make that work. All right, let's check out the listener questions we got here. Our buddy Martin Sokolsky, who's crushing it over on his Substack. If you guys are new to that, he's got content coming out 24/7.
Four-seam fantasy in Substack.
Yeah, it's crazy what he's got going on over there. He says it's the very last time to get Kyle Manzardo at ADP 486. Even if Naylor stays, Manzardo will rake in 2025. I don't disagree with him because I know I've targeted him in some DCs right now, util only, but he's going to be a beast with the Guardians.
And very, very cheap. One thing I do wonder is if Naylor stays, I'm not worried about the playing time. I wonder when will Manzardo get first base eligibility? Like you may have a UT only guy for quite some time, which again isn't the end of the world, but it's a slight drawback. But no, if Martin's in on Manzardo, I'm very much paying attention to that.
Our buddy Britton Allen, he says, "Is this the year to fade Shota and target Yamamoto?" No.
No. Agreed. Appreciate the question, but I think Shota showed out last year, and I think carries nowhere near the risk that Yamamoto does.
Yeah, I think Yamamoto will be very good. The innings counts the question. Like for how long? Talent-wise, we saw when just for even the brief health in the postseason, dude was awesome. There's no denying that. But he had his windows of not pitching deep into certain games, pitching deep. Like it was just Yamamoto had his issues. Shota very good. Even when he struggled for like 2 starts, he finished insanely strong once again. So love Shota a month ago. And then our buddy Michael C. in the Discord says, "I'm sure this will come up in the course of things, but in a 15-team league, especially, is there a position you prefer waiting on or just follow the board and the values?"
For me, the position to wait on so far is second base. Just because there is a group of, and I'll rattle them off right now: Bogarts, Rengifo, Jimenez. I won't say your guy Stout, Gleyber Torres on a rebound, Michael Garcia. If you believe in Nico Horner or Bryce Terang, all these guys are going within the 10th, 14th round. I just think you have a lot of options there, and drafting's a zero-sum game, right? You can't go early at every position. You have to fall back one. I think second base is the one. There's just no real options near the top, and there's a ton of like varied options, a lot of speed in those middle rounds. So second base, I'm waiting on.
Yeah, I'm 100% with you. Second base would be the position for me as well. I'm actually mad at myself. I kind of forced a second baseman in this DC I'm in right now, and I keep seeing all these guys I could have just waited on. But like in my brain, a DC, I need multiple at a position, so I get aggressive. But in reality, second base is one you can definitely sit on and play the game, as we shall say. So no problem with that at all. All right, that'll do it, Mr. Bloomfield. We're going to head on out here on another episode. Again, I'll give you one last shot. Final thoughts. We got ADP risers and fallers coming next week before the new year.
Yeah. Did you say at the top that we're recording Monday night instead of Tuesday?
No, we did not, but great points for not recording on Christmas Eve. Yes.
For everyone still listening at the hour 20 mark. Yeah, we're not. We are playing Santa Claus on Christmas Eve, so we will record Monday night, but we'll get stuff out there. Make sure you all know about it.
Yep, keep an eye on that.
How's the Christmas shopping going? Is it what's the status?
The daughter should be taken care of. Most other people are adults, so they get gift cards. That's where we're at. That's where we're at in the world.
Lucky they even get that.
Well, they don't. Yeah, I tell most people that ask me, I say just either daughter's college fund or don't worry about it. because I'd buy what I need is what it comes down to these days. But yes, that's kind of how it goes right now.
Nice.
What about you? You ready? You got everything built and put together for the under the tree and all that fun stuff?
Definitely not built. Jesus. Purchased, but not wrapped or built. So
yeah, none of my stuff's wrapped.
I've just got box. I've got so many freaking box. Like every time I see the whatever Amazon, FedEx truck come down the road, there's no chance in hell it goes by our house without stopping. It's just
beautiful. Yeah. Okay.
No, it's not.
People aren't listening anymore. Where this is fun behind the scenes stuff.
Yeah.
Are you a good rapper or not? Because I am horrific at it.
Awful.
I use it on the tape. I prefer bags as often as I can.
Awful. I still do the wrapping just because my kids like to kind of open, like touch and feel
tear
it.
Things up, yeah.
But awful. And then I am also like, I've got the trash bag Christmas morning. Yes. Dude, that wrapping paper is straight in the bag immediately after.
One thing I missed when I was a kid, we go to my dad's side of the family for Christmas Eve, and two of my cousins had hunting dogs, golden retriever, like hunting dogs. And you just throw the bag in the middle of the room. They grab it and they take it to the doorway where the trash bag was and put it in the trash bag. It was the coolest thing ever, man. These things are like well-trained machines.
That is winning at life.
Yeah, I need one of those, but that's another comment. So we'll wrap it up there because I don't think people need to hear all the stories. But if you ever do someday, maybe we'll do a Discord Christmas edition or something. But until next time, make sure you follow Ryan on Twitter at RyanBHQ, the podcast at Bubba Bloom Pod, the Patreon at patreon.com/Bubba Bloom. And I am on Twitter at BDintric. This was Bubba and the Bloom, episode 197. Catch you all next time.